Hey, good morning, everyone. Josh is Severe Weather. Happy Thursday to you. Good to be back online after some more travel. We have some very active weather across the plains and Midwest to talk about, and I do think something to keep an eye on into the Eastern U.S. next week. Also, the tropics are starting to show some early signs of life, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that towards the end of this video as well. But I appreciate your time today. As always, I want to just give it to you guys the way I see it. Yes, some hype involved with that when we get to major weather systems like this, but certainly one that is concerning to us here through this weekend into early next week. We do have a climbing threat for tornadoes. A pair of storm systems out of the southwest will be crossing the country, and the greatest risk that we've seen so far this spring for tornadoes does exist. Although there are some uncertainties with that, so I can't tell you with confidence who's going to get it at this point. But I would say anywhere in the red circled area, you need to be alert for potentially some tornadoes and damaging winds. And the forgotten severe threat, which I think those of you in the Carolinas were reminded of last weekend, but large hail, which creates millions of dollars in damage across the U.S. And that is certainly a threat as well. The area of greatest concern is going to be across northwestern Texas, most of Oklahoma, much of Kansas, western Missouri, southwestern Ohio, and southeastern and southern parts of Nebraska, but there will be additional severe weather potential outside of this area, all the way up into the upper Midwest, back into eastern Wyoming, southern South Dakota, even eastern Colorado today. And there could be some severe weather into parts of the Mid-South, the Ohio and Tennessee valleys as we get later into this weekend and into next week. And maybe a second area to keep an eye on here across the Mid-Atlantic region. That one's a little more uncertain, but something I am going to be tracking for you guys here as we get into the first part of next week. Probably by Tuesday would be our key day to watch. So here's a look at the ingredients that are going to be in place for this severe weather. And again, I'm going to show you just one model, but I'll kind of talk about where things can go right or wrong with that model. Again, I'm going to try to forecast and not just share models with you like some of the others may do, because there are some ingredients that don't always come into place, and there's certainly some uncertainty. Yeah, certain uncertainty, which we are aware of here. But let's take a look here at the areas of greatest concern. So you can see this big circulation here over the southwest and a feed of moisture out of the Pacific here into the southern plains. We can already see storms are beginning to erupt over Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, and even down into Arkansas, kind of two separate areas, one here and one down in here. These right now are what we call elevated convection, meaning the storms are not based at the surface. There's somewhat of maybe an inversion in place where the temperatures from the ground up actually rise instead of drop. However, when you get to a certain level, there's instability that can create these storms. So some hail, certainly a possibility, and some strong winds, but not necessarily tornadoes as we get to the early part of this day on Thursday. Now, as the day wears on and we see this area of clouds shift off to the north and east, there will be a dry line that sets up kind of in here. And along that dry line is where we typically see supercell type storms. And there's some uncertainty on when that's going to pop off here this afternoon and evening. It may not even happen for everybody. It may be just one or two cells that pop up. But with stronger winds aloft growing as the day wears on, there is certainly in place a high ceiling for severe weather. Do we meet that ceiling? I don't think anybody can say with confidence. I know some folks are talking about that happening. It may be wishful thinking for those wishing to see a major storm, but right now, the uncertainty is still a little bit higher than what we like to see. So I do want to caution you to that. Nonetheless, I would rather you be prepared in this situation and not pray for the very, I mean, you can pray for the very best, but not to ignore the threat that we could have a major system in place here by the end of the day. Now, after this storm moves out and across the plains here early in the weekend, a second storm is going to follow it, and that's going to renew the threat for severe weather, with Saturday looking to be a very active day across this portion of the country. In fact, we may see a stronger tornado or two at that point, but it's still a little bit too early to make that kind of a call. The chance is there, but we've got some days to go before we get to that point. This is the upper level chart from pivotalweather.com. You can see our first system rotating around this afternoon and evening, and the upper low by late tonight and early tomorrow morning will be across northeast Colorado. Out ahead of it, we have strong flow out of the south and southwest that will certainly be conducive to severe weather, strong winds, certainly some wind shear as well. And this area needs to be watched as it ejects into the Dakotas and Iowa here later in the day tomorrow for severe weather. You can see behind it, there's another feature which actually has some more robust spin to it, more robust wind flow, and this one could actually be a little bit more dangerous as we get into this weekend by Saturday. Here's a look at the setup on Saturday, and you can see this upper low is actually a little bit farther south and east, and we're probably going to be reloading for another outbreak of severe weather. And I do think this one has the potential to produce maybe even an EF3 or EF4 tornado. Hate to say EF5, we'll have to see, of course, on that. But certainly EF3 is more reasonable, maybe 4. And nonetheless, a tornado is a tornado. You don't want to take any of them lightly at this point. This is the time of the year when we do see this potential for strong tornadoes, now through the beginning of June across this area. And you can see this upper low as it migrates northeastward. It continues the threat for severe weather up into the Great Lakes as we get into Sunday and Sunday evening. Next week, this system lifts up into Canada, which is great news. There is a feature, though, that does drag kind of on the southern end of it that we need to watch here across the eastern Tennessee Valley and into the Mid-Atlantic and Carolinas here. Some uncertainty on how that will play off, but when you see this dip here Tuesday afternoon, you certainly need to kind of be on the lookout for some potential severe weather. And it's possible this could change and we end up kind of missing out on severe weather. It's also possible, like we saw early last week, something sneaky could develop. So just be on the lookout for that. The pattern is going to reload, by the way, next week. This is May 1st, and you can see we continue to have storms barreling into the west. This shows us here that the East Coast is going to cool down here later next week. We'll have a chilly start to the weekend, and that will block any severe weather threats. After we get past that, though, the next week, the first full week of May 6th, I believe, does have the threat for more broad severe weather and more warming as we get farther east. We'll look at that later on, though. Here's the GFS model showing you guys our big cyclone here by tonight. There'll be mountain snow across the west. There'll be intense storms from Nebraska on down into Texas, heavy rains into parts of Arkansas and Missouri. That will migrate northeastward into Iowa, western Illinois, Missouri, southern Minnesota, and eventually into Wisconsin. And we could see severe weather by tomorrow evening across the upper Midwest as that low lifts north and east. By the way, there'll be cold air wrapping into some snow across parts of Canada, but the East Coast warms up pretty quickly here at the end of the week into the weekend. So a very warm weekend expected considering how chilly it's been recently. As we get to Saturday, in the evening, you can see snow in Colorado, but a favorable low pressure track for severe weather from Texas into Missouri, maybe Iowa. And we'll have to keep an eye on local effects here in Oklahoma and Kansas for maybe a stronger tornado or two and big hail as well. That system is going to lift north and eastward. It'll continue the threat for severe weather on Sunday from Texas to Illinois and eastern Iowa as our low pressure system tracks through northwest Iowa. Anybody east and south of that is fair game for severe weather. As we get into Monday, there could still be some active weather across parts of Dixie Alley as well as across Michigan, Ohio, and lower parts of Ontario. This area has seen quite a bit of severe weather compared to what we're used to, and I think that threat's going to continue. As we get to Tuesday, that storm moves up to the Hudson Bay, but I did mention there will be enough instability, maybe some stronger wind flow to keep an eye on some isolated to maybe scattered severe weather as we get into Tuesday afternoon, anywhere from New York State down through the Delaware Valley into the Carolinas here. And behind that system, we'll continue to have some active weather. It'll get shunted southward here, so the eastern U.S. will be cool and dry later next week, but things should reload by the time we get to next weekend. I don't want to get too involved with the SIPs here. This is kind of an analog that shows the potential for severe weather. This is today and tonight. You can see it's probably going to be a little bit farther east than this. As we get to tomorrow, though, the threat for severe weather does grow and encompasses more of the plains here. As we get to the day on Saturday, here's the second wave we're watching, Oklahoma and Kansas as well. A pretty good tornado risk in this region as well. You can see at least 10% based on analogs. So definitely something to watch. Oklahoma City and Wichita, all the way back to the Panhandles region here. Getting back to the all severe modes here. As we get to Sunday, there's still a chance for severe weather and some tornadoes. It shifts east, Iowa, Illinois, Missouri, all the way down into northern Texas, Dallas, Fort Worth. I don't know about Houston, but we'll have to keep an eye on that for the evening hours on Sunday. Monday, the threat for severe weather does kind of start to split into two. We could still have some action across Texas, Oklahoma, and the Arklatex. Also keep an eye on things in Ohio and Indiana and Michigan with the northern part of our feature. I do think there's at least some potential for severe weather. Whether it's going to be a few tornadoes or damaging straight line winds is yet to be known, but that's what we're going to be keeping an eye on as we get to Monday. And Tuesday, you can see the threat for severe weather kind of splits off into the mid-Atlantic, into parts of the Northeast, and the greatest chance is going to be over the Shenandoah Valley into central Maryland. But again, the certainty on this forecast is not high, so this could certainly change. And right now, the main threat appears to be severe wind across this area based on that disturbance I showed you. There could be some hail as well out of this, but the tornado threat across this part of the country, at least, is not being shown at this point. It doesn't mean it won't happen, it's just not showing up on our analogs. So let's break things down in the shorter term. We can't really look too much into the longer term, but this is today, enhanced risk for severe weather. I'm going to kind of show you, I'm going to load this up for you guys to see. Enhanced 3 out of 5 risk here from east of Goodland, Kansas, down into northwest Texas. Slight risk, eastern Colorado, down to Oklahoma City and Wichita, and down to Lubbock, Texas as well. And this is going to be all modes, with tornadoes certainly being a threat here, especially as things start getting going here towards 4, 5, 6 o'clock this evening over western Kansas, western Oklahoma, and the eastern panhandle of Texas, which have seen quite a few tornadoes over recent years. Also, very big hail across this area. The area in red has a 30% chance of significant hail over much of western Kansas, Oklahoma, and northwestern parts of Texas. Not a highly populated area, but one I don't want to ignore either if you're in this area. As we get to tomorrow, the threat for severe weather from this first wave will move out of that area and will focus on places like Omaha, Des Moines, Kansas City, St. Joe's, Topeka, Olathe, basically the mid-Missouri River Valley. And we certainly have, with that, potential for some stronger tornadoes, maybe an EF2 or an EF3 somewhere in here. It's about a 10% risk. And that threat for tornadoes, by the way, while the certainty isn't great because of existing convection tonight, it could still make it all the way down to places like Tulsa and maybe even close to Little Rock here towards the evening hours on Friday. So the area in the brown here, we do need to watch. Big hail threat as well here, a lot like tonight. We're going to see it again tomorrow over the mid-Missouri Valley and down into eastern Oklahoma and northwestern parts of Arkansas. The threat for severe weather from this piece is going to shift up into Michigan, places like Gaylord and Alpena, Green Bay, and Milwaukee. Not quite to Chicago, but getting there. But the second wave, as it activates here, could be potentially having a bigger ceiling on Saturday. I would not be shocked if we got to a moderate risk across parts of this area. Kansas, Oklahoma, maybe even the Red River portion of Texas, as we do have the potential to see some potentially significant severe weather and maybe a violent tornado at this point. Again, I don't know the exact, I'm not very certain on it happening. The parameters are certainly high, but certainly something we're going to be watching here. And that could get all the way up into Iowa, by the way, that strong tornado threat and that big hail threat as well. So we'll be watching that. And then Sunday, even though some of that energy heads into Canada, the front's still hanging out. We have yet another short wave to keep an eye on that could bring severe weather from Wisconsin into Texas. That's the central region. I'll show you real quick the southern region here, not to ignore the southern part of this. You may need to zoom in on it, but all the way down to San Angelo and Midland, getting close to Dallas here tonight. Large hail, strong tornadoes, and severe wind. Tomorrow's slight risk goes into northeastern Texas, into the Arklatex region, marginal down to San Antonio and Del Rio, Texas. But really, I think the big severe weather day is going to be on Saturday. The hatched area here gets all the way down to places like Mineral Wells and Cisco, Texas. Slight risk for really an intense tornado all the way down to just west of San Antonio into the hill country here. And this risk of severe weather continues a little farther east Sunday. Down on the southern part of this region is where the uncertainty is a little bit higher than areas farther north, because we do lose some of the stronger wind flow when we get farther south as that storm shifts north of you. Nothing is highlighted Monday or Tuesday. The certainty level is a little bit too low, but I do think we need to watch that. I'm going to move things along here quickly. I don't want to get super technical, but you guys can see there's a lot of storm fuel building this afternoon in Kansas, eastern Oklahoma, Colorado, western Oklahoma, and northwest Texas. You can see that area shifts east of this area tomorrow, but then builds back as we get into Saturday. And Saturday has a very high ceiling, definitely some tornado risk. If you pull up a sounding, you'll see a longer hodograph. Winds at the surface, south-southeasterly, going over to southwesterly and growing. Again, this is just a general box showing you what's potentially going to be there, but certainly a high ceiling for this day on Monday. A little bit farther out range, you can see here, this is Saturday. I said Monday, I apologize. This is Saturday, and a large area of intense storm fuel and large, what we call slinkies here. These are photographs that kind of show you where the winds at the ground going up are looking like. And you see a lot of turning and a longer photograph. And that, of course, is concerning for the threat for tornadoes. As we get into Sunday, my model stops, but you can see there is still going to be a potential for this to reload and produce more severe weather across this region. I'm not going to get too involved in that at this point. Significant tornado parameter measures wind shear. It's very high over the panhandles in western Kansas today into tonight. It drops off and then rebuilds here tomorrow over the Missouri Valley. This southern area is going to have some capping, so it may not happen this far south for everybody, but certainly there's a good ceiling. And then good high ceiling, I should say. Nothing's really good from this. And then you can see we kind of get things to a maximum here early Saturday night over Kansas, Oklahoma, and even up into Nebraska and Iowa. So this definitely has the potential to be, I don't want to say a historic tornado outbreak, because we get a lot of tornado outbreaks in this part of the country, but a life-changing outbreak for somebody across this area. And I can't say with confidence where that's going to be just yet. Here is where the radar reflectivity shows storms firing here this afternoon and early evening. This is about 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock tonight. We'll see things farther south as well later on tonight where there's some more uncertainty. Some models have things go into town here, others don't. And again, we don't have strong agreement on any of these setups in the plains. I don't think we ever have, and we probably won't for any time soon, but the potential is there. And then as we get to Saturday, things clear out in the morning, meaning we've got a lot of space here for some bigger storms as we get into Saturday afternoon and night. If this were full of storms in the morning, I would say our chance for severe weather would be tempered, but it's not according to the NAM model, so definitely things are in place for some severe weather. This is where rotating storms could show up, and it's a large area, but again, this is just one model run, so don't get too fixated on it. Here's also a look a little bit farther out off to the north and east, and you can see the threat for severe weather starts growing tomorrow afternoon across Nebraska and Missouri, then tomorrow night across Iowa, and then shifting into Illinois, Wisconsin. And you can see things are definitely on the climb here on Saturday. And again, just one model, but concerning trends for northern Illinois, Wisconsin, eastern parts of Iowa, and northeastern Missouri here for Saturday afternoon. Certainly, we don't want to overlook the threat for maybe a stronger tornado in this area. And Michigan as well, you are under the gun potentially for some severe weather on Saturday, maybe even on Sunday as well here. We've got the front kind of lifting north. You can see a lot of storm fuel with this one model run. So anywhere from Wisconsin to northern parts of Ohio, northeast Indiana, and southwest Ontario potentially will be under the gun. Here's a look at this NAM model again. Just kind of a messy setup, but after the main wave moves through and things rebuild, we do definitely have the potential to see things getting going. This is the European model showing potential lightning, and it's a global model, so it's going to probably show more in what happens, but you can see things getting busy today and tonight, pretty busy farther east tomorrow. This is Saturday afternoon and night, lots of lightning from Texas to Lake Huron. As we get to Sunday, still a pretty active day expected, carrying into the evening, even in Louisiana. The northern part of this kind of fades, but we reload here for Monday. The best chance for storms will be down south, but as we get into Tuesday, notice this one area that we do need to keep an eye on across the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic region, maybe into the Carolinas as well. With stronger wind flow aloft, there may not be a ton of lightning, but there could be quite a bit of wind damage and even a few tornadoes. And then things get going here again, back in the plains before our front drops south and east. And then we'll start getting busy again as we get to Sunday, the 5th of May. Here's a closer look at the eastern United States. And here is our trough that is swinging through here Monday afternoon from the Ohio River into the Great Lakes. Keep an eye on this for Tuesday with this faster wind flow in here. We definitely have some potential severe weather in the forecast for Tuesday afternoon, and then fading by Tuesday evening as it hits the Atlantic Ocean. I just got to take a breath here because it's a lot. Real quick, 10% area of interest here across the East Central Atlantic. Waters are warmer than they should be. They're not quite there for this to become something tropical, but just something interesting to note at this point. You can see the circulation here from Alex Borum's website. We had another one as well that moved into Newfoundland here overnight. I don't think this is going to become anything. You can see the convection starting to fall apart, but it is a nice little swirl. But things are very busy over the intertropical convergence zone, busier than typically what we see. And nothing of imminent threat, but we're already starting things off active here in the tropics, and it's not even May yet. You can see here is our swirl. Again, doesn't look like it's going to develop. It may have some strong winds, but limited thunderstorm convection with it. But we've seen multiple waves that have come off of Africa here over the last few days, and they're fading quickly because we've got this stronger wind flow aloft here out of the southwest. This is wind shear, and it is certainly going to keep anything that comes off of Africa kind of at bay. But the fact that we're seeing this a little bit sooner than what we would expect means if you're in the Caribbean, you need to keep an eye on things in May, as we're kind of ahead of schedule here. There's a lot of dry Saharan air in here, so whatever does come off of Africa is going to fade fast. But after we get past the area of high wind shear into the Caribbean, we definitely need to watch. Even if nothing forms, this could be a very wet May for those of you in the islands. Puerto Rico has been very wet recently. South America, even Jamaica, Cuba have been kind of wet, and I think that trend continues as we head into the month of May. So we're going to have more on that coming up here in the coming weeks. I have to travel over the next few days for work, but it's a blessing every day to be able to provide for my family, and I hope that you're in that situation as well. So no complaints here. Nobody wants to complain. And if anything, I appreciate you guys. So thank you for your time this morning. If you did enjoy this video, please consider becoming a subscriber if you haven't already. Apologize for not being able to do this as much in April. It's just been a really wacky month, but God has been good to me and my family, and I pray that He has been for you as well. My reason every day is to glorify God, and this is how I do it. This is how I've been called. I give thanks to the Lord. As a Christian, He has given me Jesus Christ as my Redeemer, and I pray that He has for you as well. 1 Chronicles 16:34, "Oh, give thanks unto the Lord, for He is good, and His mercy endureth forever." And where I think we all fall short is that we fail to recognize that God really is good, that He can fight our battles for us, and that if we try to do it ourselves, we're going to be sorely disappointed. If we don't see the value in us that God has given us, we're going to be sorely disappointed. But if we go to Him in prayer, if we go to Him in thanks, then I truly believe that we are going to see the many blessings that are there. I pray that that is the situation for you, that you, in fact, while you may be struggling, you are seeking something better. You are seeking eternal life, and I will be happy to pray for you no matter what your beliefs are, or whatever situation that you're in, because I truly believe God is good and that He is going to bless you in many ways, much like He has for me. Hope you all have a great day. I'm traveling, but please be safe. Please follow all watches and warnings, and I'll try to do some posts when I can. See you all then. Take care.